I said hyphen.
Okay, it's 4:15. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of things to do. Hopefully we'll get done in a reasonable amount of time. I would like to, unless we go excessively long, like to have a brief meet and confer at the end of this too. So, all of you, I believe I sent everybody the agenda. Based on Monday's meeting, I would like to add, Monday's board meeting, I would like to add one agenda item. After discuss library facilitator calendar, I'd like to insert leave buyback in there. If you watched the board meeting, that came up as a topic again, and we need to have some further discussion on that. With that addition, anybody opposed to approval of the agenda? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, same sign. Okay, the agenda is approved. Before we go on to the meeting, I do have a sermon that I want to preach. Won't take long. Last year obviously was the first year for this, and I felt like we made tremendous strides in terms of helping employee groups across the district to see outside of their own world and to see the broader view of the district as a whole. This has been a really trying year, I understand that. A lot of turmoil for everybody. I felt like last meeting we kind of morphed back a little bit into a more self-serving, look out for me type of attitude, and I'd really like for us to, as tempting as that is, everybody sees and knows their own world the best, try to keep the big picture in mind, because it's all interconnected, and I think we've all found that out by looking at the budgets, by looking at all these programs. So as we go through this, if you try your best to keep the big picture in mind, I think that'll give us the best result. See, that wasn't very long for a sermon.
It's a quick sermon.
Amen, brother. Approval of the minutes. Anybody see anything in the minutes that you found disturbing? Or that you think is not accurate? Let's put it that way.
Let's put it that way.
Anything that's not accurate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of disturbing things there. Anything?
So on the PTO buyback, is that what you said we're going to discuss here? Just
Yes,
a little
but
bit? Okay.
we inserted that toward the end of our agenda.
Okay, so we'll just get to
Yep. All those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand, please. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Minutes approved. Finalize the proposed flex time change recommendation. That would be flex time and, where did my sheet go? Oh, here it is, and salary staff discretionary leave. This is exactly the same as we saw the last time. I'm just bringing it back because I would like to, when we do meet and confer tonight, get an official recommendation on this. So is there anything here that we need to revisit? This is exactly what we saw last time. Anything from anyone?
I think everyone's done a really good job.
Okay, so all in favor of passing this on to meet and confer as presented, raise your hand, please. Opposed, same sign. Okay, passes. You guys are easy so far. Update on the staff reassignment plan. I passed out a sheet to you that has both some red and some black print on it, and there was also a page in the other things that I sent out. On this page it has update 2/15/18. There hadn't been a whole lot of movement since the last time we met. We did notify the displaced ESOL teachers where their assignments were going to be. We should be able to do the same with special education staff, hopefully by the middle of next week. And then the next time we plan to have a round of classroom teacher reassignments is going to be on March 1st. On February 26th, the board will make some decisions based on the title budgets and things having to do with PAT and early childhood ed, which will give us the direction we need to make some reappointments there, some more placements. So the timeline is board meets Monday the 26th. On Tuesday the 27th, anybody who is still needing a placement that's eligible for any of those positions will receive a survey. The survey will list just the available positions and just the buildings that have openings. We'll ask for a short turnaround on that for teachers to get that back to us on the 27th. I'm sorry, on the 28th, and Wednesday the 28th, and then on the 1st of March, which is a Thursday, we'll have another round of reappointment or reassignment meetings. So that's where we are with that.
What date was the reassignment meeting?
March 1st, Thursday, March 1st. Then this other sheet that I just gave to you, the teacher reduction still needed there. If you look on the right-hand side under the totals, when we started, we needed basically 96, and this is certified reappointments. We have 42 and a half. That's been mostly through retirements and resignations. A few that were just appointed because their buildings closed, and then it leaves 53 and a half remaining. The board approved 6 resignations in executive session Monday night that are not accounted for in here, so today's total, instead of 53.5, would be 47.5. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
I'm missing one too, Brian. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, and so again, at this point in time, we have 13 tenured and 16 probationary elementary folks who need placement. And at this next round of appointments, it will be, the tenured teachers will be placed in that round. Okay, and then that won't get everybody, all 13 and all 16, but it will get at least all of the tenured teachers will have an assignment after that.
So the middle school, that's all 4, high school's all 3, elementary's, like, that's total, right? Not 16.5 per building?
Oh, no, total.
Total, okay.
Yeah, total for the 4 middle schools, and 33.5 for the 3 high schools. Again, our preferred order in all of this is retirements or resignations. We've had a few non-renewal discussions, and we have a few more of those coming, so that will add a few more to the number. And then the last resort, which we may or may not get to, it would be a reduction in force, an official reduction in force where we would notify teachers before. Our goal date for that, as it says on there, is April 8th at the latest, and for non-renewals to handle all of those by March 26th. Any questions on this information?
Why does the 13 tenured and 16, okay, when you say need, those are
positions that
that
we
you
know
need
we're,
to
that we know
cut,
we're
or that you
keep.
actually need to keep?
The 15 are the need to cut.
So
These
remaining to
13,
cut.
the 13 tenured and probationary are displaced teachers that we need to place, and we
Okay.
had counted all along on them having a placement. So those, yeah, I see why that's confusing.
Okay.
So the 15 remaining under elementary, that means there are 15 more either retirements or resignations that we need.
You need
And these other, the 13 tenured and 16 probationary, are teachers that we know we're going to need spots for. It's just a matter of where are those spots going to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question about something on the staff reassignment plan update, if you're not done talking through that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, okay, and I know I've had some conversations with Dr. Norman, but in a setting with other ears and also recorded so other staff can hear it. Can you explain the restructuring of the special schedule for elementary? Why it was not done through the same process as like block scheduling, and why it has never appeared on a list of potential cuts, but now it's happening. We have fielded tons of questions about that, just not understanding why it hasn't happened the same way. It seemed like everything else was done very much in the open, and this has kind of not been. And like I said, I know I've talked with Dr. Norman. I just feel like it would be great for you to speak to that, where other staff can hear it on a recorded message, but also everyone here can hear that.
Well, I'm going to let Dr. Norman give you the specifics because she did most of the
Right.
99% of the work on it. The reason it was done differently is that the discussion about redoing block scheduling began in 2004. We have to have this done by April 15th.
I understand. Again,
So
I know.
that is, there are a lot of things that we are deviating from what I believe is the best practice. You know, making appointments rather than opening every position as a truly open position. We just simply don't have time to do that. And that was the main reason for the restructuring of the elementary. Dr. Norman, go ahead and give some of the other
Sure.
specifics.
The reduction of special staff from the closing of Lake and the closing of Humboldt is kind of where all of it started. So in looking at closing those two schools, we moved all of those children to Lindbergh and to Hosea. And so as we started looking at what were the staffing needs of both those buildings, Lindbergh and Hosea, it was, okay, what is the typical elementary schedule in St. Joe? What does that look like? And so we looked at all of the data, and that data was provided at the meeting with specials teachers, and I have that and would be happy to forward that document to anybody. But it shows the data of the disparity between elementary schools across town. Some schools had 112 to 120 minutes a week of PE, other schools had 45 minutes a week of PE. And so why are kids in St. Joseph School District in elementary school getting different amount of special time just because of their zip code? Why do we have that disparity? And what staffing needs do we have for those large buildings? So that's kind of where all that came from. So the displacement of staff came from the closing of the schools. So then how to figure out what staffing needs we had was the next piece of that puzzle that was looked at. And so that has come through conversations and looking at the state standards. What should the standard be? And so the state standard is 50 minutes a week of art, music, and PE. What we have in the schedule that's been developed is 62 minutes a week. Also,
Of each?
yes. And then built in to that schedule, things to take care of our teachers, such as duty-free lunch. You know, that was part of it. Is that something we have to have? But that's something that we feel is important, and so that was put on the list as this is important. It's important to try to keep that teacher plan time the same time every day so that grade levels can collaborate with one another. If you teach third grade, you can meet with your third grade teaching partners every day of the week and collaborate, or you can share kids for reading and math and personalize that learning piece. So those were the things that were identified as important to try to build that district schedule around and have some consistencies. So that's kind of where it came from.
Consistency and equity.
Correct. So, most important. But it really started out with the closing of the two schools and then determining what our staffing need was. So that's where it started and why that was looked at. So we now have a framework that has that 50 minutes of PE every 4 days, music, art, and library. And I do believe staffing assignments, we promised staff we would have those assignments made by the 28th, but I believe they went out today.
They went out today.
Oh, wow.
Is that 50 minutes or 62 minutes?
It's 50 minutes every 4 days, which averages to 62 minutes a week.
Okay, got it.
Because every fourth week they'll get 100
Right, that makes
because it
sense.
would be a Monday.
So it'll
Friday.
just be a rotating,
That makes sense.
Correct.
And
So-
so it's gonna be the same in every building now,
Correct.
and it is state.
no matter how many sections.
Correct.
And so, but we're meeting the standards that those benchmarks, we're meeting all of those.
We're meeting the DESI standards as well as we're meeting the criteria that we have made locally of what we feel is important for every elementary student and every elementary teacher. And that's the 50 minutes of plan time a day for all teachers.
So does the reduction in the number, you said some buildings had 112 to 125 average minutes. Does that reduction down to the 62 average reduce the need for staff? Does that itself reduce the need for staff, or is it only the closing of the buildings that has reduced the number of staff for that?
It's kind of a function of both, Eric. We're not reducing more because of the equalization. We're just, because you have 6 art, music, and PE teachers out of Lake and Humboldt. And I believe it's, I think there's 5 full-time teachers, specials teachers that are on the reduction list.
Okay.
But there's not going to be one teacher assigned per building, correct? Is that what I
Correct.
understand? There won't be one teacher per elementary building, so those special teachers are gonna be,
Some
are
of
all
them.
of them or just some of them?
Some of them are traveling, but not all of them.
Why would some of them travel?
Because like if you're in a full schedule for a specials teacher requires 28 sections to be full-time in that 4-day rotation. So if you're a building that has 14 sections, you only really need a half-time art teacher, half-time music teacher, half-time art teacher.
And that's based on numbers,
It's based on sections.
Sections of students.
Sections of each
population
grade
of
level.
students.
Correct.
Approximately how many buildings are gonna have a traveling, do you know?
Traveling teacher?
Dr. Norman, could you just send that schedule out to everybody? I mean, that's not confidential in any way, is it?
Can I just send it to you and then you send it out? Do you have a, actually, if
I
I
would have
could,
to transmit it to
if
you.
I can send it in a few minutes, if that's okay?
Yeah.
As long as I can see everybody's name tag. So I need to make sure I get to the right person. Okay, thank you. I'll send that out. Other questions?
Will the librarians travel?
No, they will not.
Yeah.
They will not.
And they're the fourth part of that
Correct.
rotation. Correct. Again, I know I've talked to you, I want everyone to understand, because I know that,
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question, Melissa. There are things that, a lot of things that we would do differently under different circumstances, but we felt like there was input from a lot of people.
I know, like I said, I know that, but I'm one, and I mean, I can tell the people that ask me, but I think having that greater message sent out where I can say, oh, we talked about it in United, you can go watch it here. They feel like when it's hearing the
Sure.
same thing, it's getting the same consideration that other stuff.
And I mean, we've talked about in this meeting that we've brought a lot of things to United that we might not have brought to United in prior years because
Yeah,
we're trying to be as transparent as possible. Not everything is gonna be at this table. I mean, there's just gonna have to be some decisions that are made by administration, and that's just not gonna come through.
yeah. Any of you who have been in decision-making roles know that a lot of times it's impossible to make a decision that pleases everybody. I do want to give kudos to Dr. Norman. She worked hours and hours and hours on this, and I think we have an excellent product. It really is equitable, and one school's the same as the other, and I think that's really a good step forward
That's super important.
for what we have. Anything else on that topic? All right, the update on the budget reduction things. Pay to participate is going to go to the board on the 26th, so there'll be a decision one way or the other there. High school summer activities, I can't remember if I updated this to you or not. What it's supposed to say is that the recommendation is going to be to have 4 each from each high school. We had talked about eliminating it entirely or some modification thereof. Dr. Haynes met with the activities directors from each of the 3 high schools, and that was the recommendation that they came up with. I mean, obviously, the board can do what they want with it, but the recommendation is 4 at each school, and that saves roughly $65,000 instead of the $86,800.
Okay.
And they also came up with criteria for how those 4 would be selected, and that'll all be part of the board docs if you want to look at that. In fact, it was on the last meeting.
Do those 4 positions include the, what we talked about last time, didn't we say the band or something had, that they were on the same
My
consideration
recollection
for
of
this?
that discussion was that if we took all of those positions away, that we would eliminate the band and the
Yes.
drum line.
Yes.
My opinion, and that's, I guess since I got to decide, I did. Since we left some positions there, we did not recommend that the band or the drum line summer stipend go away.
I just wanted that clear, thank you.
Yeah.
So these would be athletics.
Those would,
Yeah.
those are,
But
yeah.
the band and,
The band and the
Drum
drum
lines
line
would-
have a separate line item that remained on there.
Well, isn't this specifically weight room?
Well, they do other conditioning sorts of things. It's a weights and conditioning sort of program.
Limited athletics, it's
I-
for
right, I'm
I
just
had
saying it's an
somebody-
athletic thing.
bring this to, and I hadn't even thought about it, on Monday, they asked me, would this not fall under a pay to participate thing, where if they wanted to come weightlift, they would pay a fee? Because it's part of athletics, and if we're implementing, this is a paid position, would it not fall under that? I hadn't even thought about
A
that,
smaller fee.
so
That's a
I'm just
not a
throwing
bad
that
idea.
out there. That thought had never crossed my mind, but I thought it was actually a really good idea, because it is an athletic position.
So,
I'd like to hear Paula to say about that. If we're paying to participate and then paying to condition, if that's part of your sport.
I mean,
you
it
wanna
wouldn't
play
be
your
the
sport.
$50 fee or
It's
whatever.
summer, I mean,
I don't
it's a
think
summer.
that's a good.
I guess I sort of thought the
I think
$50
that's part of
was
your
all
fee you
encompassing, that
paid
that would help
do
towards
the
that
sport.
fee, but,
It's to
I
pay the
don't know.
sponsor of the sport, so.
well, and then it's for transportation. Wes, can you clarify that? The fees that we're collecting, the $50 for the high school and then the 25 for the middle schools, it will pay to cover the fees for the stipends and then travel fees and like the fees that are associated with,
We'll apply, what I proposed to Dr. Newhart and so Dr. Haynes was that we would apply it to all mission fees. And then anything left would be applied to transportation costs for the activities. And it still wouldn't cover all the activity transportation costs, but that's where we would apply the money. So that way everybody can see that that's where it
So
was.
it's not technically a portion of what would be part of the stipend that the coach.
No, it wouldn't even get close to covering this.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys understand, even if we raise 150,000, that's the tip of the iceberg as far as what activities cost.
Right.
Yeah, that
Well,
would be a,
I guess I have a question then, because that the sports and the cheerleading and palms and all of that, that falls under a Misha thing. But what about the band and the choir?
Band and choir are under
They're,
that also.
they're all under Misha?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it
I
is
just wanna
only
make sure.
activities that are under Misha, like
What's not under Misha?
student body,
student
Student
council,
councils, those
FBLA,
kinds of
CCLA,
things.
DECA,
uh,
I don't know. more.
those things would not be the pay to
Correct,
participate,
yeah.
correct?
National Honor Society is not under Misha.
So
Dr.
you don't pay a
Haynes-
participate fee for that?
Dr. Haynes was given the task by, do you have the list by any chance?
I do, but I don't have it with me.
Okay.
I've got the update from the meeting today I had with Dr. Haynes. In looking at this and trying to implement it effectively, we believe the best way to do it is apply the fees to students in Misha events. Because you have issues in other paid sponsor areas that are co-curricular in nature. And to determine, it's been a little bit of a nightmare, to be quite honest with you. So the numbers that were presented to you on the savings was strictly mission numbers anyway. And we believe that's the best route to go, and I believe that's what Dr. Haynes will be presenting to the board on the 26th as a finality proposal. Just the Misha paid sponsor events.
So in essence, if you're a high school athlete and you are only participating in one sport during a school year, they would be required to pay $85.
15.
No, just
50.
50.
So the 35 goes away.
The 35
Comes
Is
out
a
of
part of
the
it, so we're just
35.
basically adding 15.
Correct.
If you
If
want-
they
For
only
one
do
sport.
For
one
one
sport.
sport, yeah.
If it's two sports,
Then you're at, it's,
They would pay
100.
100 instead of 35.
okay.
And then there's a cap. What's the cap?
Well, the cap is
250.
$250 for an individual kid, and like if somebody's got 4 kids, their family max is $400.
now Misha also has, I mean, they sponsor other things, you know that we compete in. Cheerleading,
Quiz bowl.
quiz bowl,
Yeah.
okay,
So anything that's, and we'll have a list of those?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome, that will help. Because I didn't realize that band and music and choir, that was on Misha, I did not know that, so.
And speech and debate would be too, Lori.
Speech and debate, okay.
Family.
DECA,
Any
does that
other-
fall under there?
Any other
Decca?
comments on the high school activities?
Julie has a good
So
question.
I know this is
Dr.
gonna,
Newhart, listen to
this
this.
is gonna happen to me. So what about, we're gonna have parents that say step siblings on the max? Have we talked about that?
Step, are they in that household?
So how does that work? Is it household, is it, of course,
If they're the
Maybe just
parent
a
or
guardian
guardian.
area to think about.
Yeah.
just something to throw out there to think about, it's going to
That
happen.
would be inclusive of the family
I would think so.
coverage.
That would be my off-the-cuff response, would be that if they're responsible for their care,
They're in it.
they're,
The
Good
other
question,
night,
because she's the secretary who's gonna be collecting those
Right.
fees.
the other night at the board work session, I thought we had said they wouldn't even be allowed, it was said in this meeting, they wouldn't even be allowed to practice until that had been paid. But then I was thinking the other night, it was said they would get to practice, they just wouldn't get to.
No, it was said the other
play.
night they would get to try out. Until you make the
If it's a
team,
sport that
you
they
don't
have,
pay.
that they
Okay.
cut in.
But once you make the team, before you get a uniform, or get
practice
to
or anything.
practice, because
Okay.
practice doesn't start quote-unquote
Right,
practice
right,
till you've
right.
made the team, but there's tryouts. That's tryouts, not practice, so that
So-
was the
okay.
difference.
Is
Once
that
you're on
not
the
gonna
roster.
Is that not gonna I mean, I hate to be hung up on this, but is that not gonna cause issues for teams when you have the list of the 15 kids that have made this team, and then 2 of them can't pay, so now you have 2 spots that are
They
not,
probably shouldn't try out if they can't pay.
but
They're gonna have to pay the fee. So I would think that that would be spelled out in an administrative document that says, if you try out, then and make the team, you're gonna be expected to pay. So if you can't pay, don't try out. I mean, that just is a given to me.
If that happens, I would also assume that the coaches would have the people
Alternates.
ranked, and whoever was the 16th
I'm
spot.
just saying,
gets
that's
put
gonna
in.
happen.
But you're
That's
right,
gonna happen.
it will. The reality is that will happen.
So they would go away and the next kid would just
Yeah.
pop up.
So coaches are gonna have to be aware of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
But hopefully they won't try out, knowing now that we
They
have a
won't.
pay to pay.
They will,
they will.
They will.
Anything
because
else
they'll
on
think
that
it
topic?
doesn't, it's
Apply
an
to them.
exception.
Nothing applies to
Do you
them.
want
All right.
to speak to the extra days that
Yeah.
you were taking that up?
Yep, we're gonna, on the IB test fees, I don't know, some of you may have heard the discussion at the board meeting, you may not have. Paul, have you been involved in those discussions at the building level much?
I mean, a little bit,
Can you give them a
I'm on the
synopsis of
IB.
what the building recommendation is?
I mean, as someone who's a huge proponent of IB, I mean, I love the program, I've been through the training and would love to see it. You know, we just talked about, if, in a sense, we've talked, some discussion's been, you could do a pay to play almost there, because it's pay to test. If the district's not gonna fund the tests and be able to do that, because the test fees, like it says here, are about $60,000. If we decided to just say, okay, we're gonna keep IB, I mean, on one side, keep IB, let them pay for their tests, but teachers have to be trained. That's where a lot of the expenses and stuff come from, I mean, teachers, and the trainings are, for example, Houston, Clearwater, Tahoe, I think it's one, I mean, there's just the training, it's it's travel expenses, it's pretty expensive to do that, so hard to sustain that way. We've talked about allowing IB to continue for the people going into level 2 next year. And because it takes a year or so to cycle out of IB as a program if you had to. So it's kind of where we are. We're still I think there's a lot of discussion up in the air still. I mean, I hear, talking to Dr. Stevens, I know there's some board members and stuff that really want to keep it. Some, I don't know exactly where we are there. I think that's kind of where everyone's looking is exactly what is, it was not on the schedules that students filled out for, like, say you're a sophomore, they did not sign up when they did registration this time, because as of now, we're kind of looking at probably the phasing out of it, but kind of open to everything still as well, I mean, whatever.
Our strong recommendation is not to do the IB.
That's what I was presented to the board. The recommendation was to
Finish the
finish it.
second year program.
Right.
Just with the upkeep of the program is very difficult and would be probably a strain on the district as far as the training and, if you have teachers retire, I mean, I'm trying to think of how many IB teachers are gonna be leaving this year. That you have to replace with another teacher that has to have that training. I don't know where that.
So can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
If we weren't in the situation financially where we are right now, would this be a different conversation?
I think so. I think that.
So really, we're basing whether we want to keep this IB program or not solely on the financial constraints.
A lot of it, yeah.
Probably a lot of it, yeah.
I have kids who are very upset that they can't take
Oh,
IB
I've gotten
credits.
tons of
I mean,
emails
very upset.
from former students, from current students, from parents, and
Dr. Williams, do you have anything
I mean,
you would like
she's-
to?
Do you think it would
the
be
inception of the
not
program
part
is
of the
of course.
conversation if we weren't in the financial constraints we are? Do you still think with the data and what's been presented that it would still be a administrative recommendation to discontinue it?
Well,
Has been in prior years,
that's a tough question.
has been the last 3
And
years.
It has been since I've been on the board.
what I think is that the financial condition of our district has driven this conversation. And part of what Paul hasn't said, but I think is a reality, is that when you have advanced placement, dual credit, IB, any of those singleton courses when you're building a master schedule, in a lot of them are small. You have some large ones, but you have some very small ones. Anytime you have a small course, it drives up the numbers of students sitting in another section. So if, I'm going to use an example. If, for instance, you have an IB math course that has 10 or 12 students in it, then that likely means that you have an Algebra 1 course that has now upwards of 30 students in it because you have reduced the size of this section and it balloons the size of another section. That's a reality, whether it's IB, AP, dual credit, or any other course that could be a singleton with a small enrollment. And that's why when you're building a master schedule at the high school level, you have to really set those enrollment kind of cut points to see what is our minimum looking like so that it doesn't drive up the numbers in courses where kids need, like an Algebra 1, a 9th grade Algebra 1, a 9th grade biology. You want those kids to have more individualized attention to set them up for success in high school. On the flip side, Paul is right, the expenses around IB are greater. Different than advanced placement, you're required to do training as a teacher to teach the IB course. Advanced placement recommends it, doesn't require it.
You just have to have a master's, correct?
Say that again?
You just have to have a master's to do
No,
that?
that's dual credit.
Oh, that's dual credit, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there aren't really
Any requirements for,
any hard and
Wow.
fast requirements
wow,
for
I'm
advanced
surprised.
placement.
Other than
There are
having
for
a
dual credit, there
curriculum.
are for IB. And then your IB evaluation comes up every 5 years for your renewal. This is, I mean, it's a tough conversation for me because, I invested a lot of time and energy in the IB when it got started at Central. And I understand, having a child who has taken some of the courses, not a full diploma student, but whether or not they score the passing score on an exam, the rigors of the coursework and the internal and external assessments is different and sets them up in a different way for success in college courses. So then you have to weigh, how many passing scores do we have, how many do we not have? Is the trade-off of the rigors of the course, whether they don't pass, when they don't pass, is that enough to offset the cost that is incurred in the district? And right now, we don't have the local funds, that's the hard part. It's no different, IB, preschool, parents as teachers, all of these things are really good things. And I think finances, we should always examine everything every year and have these tough conversations, but the decisions are different this year because of the financial constraints that our district is faced with. That's simply the reality. And so then we're making decisions about things with the additional lens of finance layered on top of it. It's not a conversation that's fun for anyone.
For sure. Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
You did, thanks.
I think one statistic that was presented to me, and it was an IB instructor, he presented us the statistic that if a student can obtain a 4 on an IB English and IB Math, the SL programs, the first level, they have like a 70 to 75% more chance of graduating college. I mean, that's if they can get a 4 on those, that's how they kind of translated it. So it is. I mean, it's a wonderful program. But there definitely are the finances that go with it. It's tough.
Thank you.
All right, the last item on the budget reduction one was the extra days. You can see that's scored through. Was a fairly big ticket item, $45,000. I solicited input from all the principals who had counselors with extra days in their building. They all indicated that they felt like they were well used. So that was the end of the discussion on that one. I feel like we need to leave that. The extra duty schedule was next, and I think I scanned it to you with color on it, and I know some of you, if you printed it off, you maybe not have access to a color printer. Very few changes to it. At the top of the first page, core curriculum advisors, with the restructuring of the curriculum advisor program, that is no longer necessary because those folks, instead of this stipend, will have 30 additional days on their contracts. So that needs to be removed. At the bottom of the first page where it says curriculum advisors non-core, I should have gotten that in red as well, because our 5 generalists will be acting in that as well, so we will not have curriculum advisors for the non-core. There were no changes on page 2. On page 3, believe we had already talked, Darren Verdick told me that honor choir was not going to be compensated, so we took that off. And then the only other change would be whatever happens with the summer activities at the bottom of page 3. Right now it says 16 at 1,810 each, so whatever the board votes to do on that would be the change for that.
But if there's only 4 per high school, then it should be 12, right?
Well, this is saying
says per
16
high
per
school.
high school. It says activity summer individuals per high school. Right now it's 16 per high school, so we would change it to 4. If that's what the vote is, whatever the vote is, we would change that number 16 to reflect what's new. Anybody have any questions about the extra duty schedule? This is something that I would like to talk about at the meet and confer, so I would like to get your consensus here. If you're in favor of the extra duty schedule as presented, would you raise your hand, please? Opposed, same sign. Okay, so we'll send that on this evening as well. The additional pay rates document is a little messier. But I need a scapegoat, so it's going to be Wes. He's used to it. Okay, how many of you have this in a form that you can tell what is in red and what's not? Most of you, some of you? Okay, about half, so I'm going to have to go through
Was
it.
that sent out in the original email as well?
Yes, I believe it was.
But it's funny.
I thought I sent it out.
The red is still, like on ours, it's still,
Every time I print.
it's just gray.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What you might not be able to see are the numbers that were read.
No.
All right, so at the very first, accompanist for district competition. Right now, it's $15 per hour. Darren Verbick is suggesting $22 per hour. He did a survey of the surrounding districts, found that of the metro districts that are similar sized schools, found that their average was $23.50. That was the average for them, and so he came up with a number of 22. Any discussion there? Want to follow his recommendation? Don't want to? What do you think? We'll leave that one out now, because we'll have some outside people sometimes. Anybody care one way or the other?
15 is definitely low, 20 to 25. In my experience as a private music teacher, that would be about,
So 22.
So 22 as a private music teacher you would think is fair?
yeah, 20 to 25 is,
Typical.
I wouldn't do less than 20.
Anybody deeply opposed to that? Okay. This one, I'm going to have to bring back because there's some things I wasn't able to find out. The chaperone for the JROTC summer camp, Dr. Hubbock and I have a meeting with Colonel Hall. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the JROTC program in general and look at the number of calendar days that they have. If we limit their calendar days down to 181, which is what we're considering, then they wouldn't be on staff during the summer. So I'll bring you back some more news about that. The counselor summer scheduling, we're going to look some more into that and find out if that should be encompassed in the extra days that they have, or if this needs to be on top of that. Some people told me, well, no, it should be during their regular days, and some are saying it's extra. So again, I need to get more information there, whether we need 2 line items. They already get the extra duty contract for days, and if they still need this line in there.
So you're gonna figure out what these are for?
Well,
If they already have the
if
contracted
the
days.
expectation is that they do the scheduling during their extra contract days, then there should be no need for this. If they're doing other things during those extra contract days and still need time to schedule, then we probably need to leave this.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I
Does
just don't.
that, well, never mind, because registration could be a part of their extra
Well,
days.
registration is different. They would have a day in their extra duty contract devoted to, or
Right.
however many days of
Right.
registration.
That's
they
what it
have.
says, it's part of their days.
Yeah, that is. So I'll bring back some more information on that. On page 2, the MAP training, I would like your guys' yes or no on, been suggested to raise that to $350 per class to match with the New Teacher Institute presenter, which is about 8 lines down, which is $350 per day. Right now it's $250. My personal thought is that there's a difference there because once you prepare to be a MAP trainer, you teach a class, that class is the same every time you teach it. It's not like you have to start over with prepping every time. If you're gonna do something for New Teacher Institute, you're gonna be preparing new material, and in my mind, that's more work than repeating the same program over and over. What do you guys think?
I would agree with that.
What's the time commitment
Yeah.
for both? I would say that's probably more what they're looking at if they're wanting to up it. Because isn't MAT training over several nights? I've never
Do
had
we have
to go,
anybody who's,
but-
I've been MAT trained.
how many hours, how many contact hours was it actually?
First night, when you're like at your initial, it's 16 hours, and your renewals are 8 hours.
Okay, so a person who's never had MAT training would spend 16 hours.
It's 4 nights after school, and then your renewal is 2 nights after school.
And these trainers do all of those trainings, right?
Yes.
So what is the hour, what are the hours, she's not there, the hours put in for a presenter for New Teacher Institute? I can't imagine it's
Probably less
more than that, and they're getting paid more, so. I think it's more the time commitment than the
Then the prep.
prep.
Okay.
Oh, that makes sense.
I'll get some more information on that then too. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. My thought was it doesn't take any time to prepare after the first time or the second time because you've done it.
Which
Several
makes
times.
sense, but I would agree with
Well, and I
that.
would
But there
say
is
that a lot
a
of the New
significant-
Teacher Institute courses could start repeating as well. It's probably gonna be
That's possible.
similar
too.
things. So I think it's probably more the hours put in than the content.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way. All right, well, I'll get some more info on that. A couple of them I'm just gonna change because I can, but anything that says less than the minimum wage per hour that the state requires, it's $7.85 in Missouri, so kind of 2/3 of the way down, we've got a $7.65 for part-time student nutrition services. I'll change that to $7.85.
So you were eliminating the Friday school,
Yes,
or middle schools?
the Friday schools will all become, my recommendation will be that the Friday schools all become detention,
Okay.
which is on the first page. We're paying at some levels 10 and in some levels 20, and they seem to be the same thing. And so I believe it would make sense to make them all $10 per hour for detention. The middle school, that was Friday. The bottom two on page 2, the reader's workshop, reading assessment, and the first one on the next page, I've been told we don't need any more. Registration is in yellow, for those of you who have color. Instead of $100 per day, I believe it ought to be $12.50 per hour, because it's not equitable. If somebody works 4 hours at registration, they're getting $100, and somebody works 8 hours at registration, they're getting $100. But if we go $12.50 an hour, then it will, for the people that work 8 hours, it will still end up being $100. And if they work less than that, then I think the pay should be proportionally less. Any problems with that? Issues?
I just have can we go back a minute?
Sure.
I think I'm struggling with the detention thing, because to keep the gate at a game, it's $15 per hour, but to keep detention kids, it's 10. You're making it 10 now.
What
I
was the
struggle with
total?
that.
I think it's always been 10 for detention.
Well, in some schools, it's always.
But middle
been 10.
school, it's been
Oh.
20 for your Friday schools.
But they don't do them on Friday, they do them on Wednesdays.
But we do them on Wednesdays and we're getting paid $20.
It's detention. Whatever, we should pay the same in all the schools, and most of the schools are getting $10 for detention, right?
How
I'm
many
just
schools
saying-
have detention?
What?
Is
They
this
all
middle and
should.
high school? Or do we in
High
elementary
schools
have
have
detention?
detention.
I think it's
You wanna-
very
High schools have
rare,
detention,
isn't it,
right?
Dr. Norman? To have detention
So
in
middle, do we have
elementary.
detention in elementary?
I'm just saying
then?
that-
I mean, you
Rare.
can,
But not now,
but it's
very
rare.
rare.
They're
Yeah,
supposed to be
probably
up
with the
them
principal
out
with
for
this.
detention.
But I'm
Okay.
saying,
Okay.
gatekeeping
Maybe
is-
lunch, stuff too.
Yeah,
but you're giving
So no after school then?
I would,
I say,
if
take
we
the
do,
same
I don't know
down
that
to
anybody's
10.
getting
That's what I'm-
paid for
that's
it.
what
I
I'm
think it's
saying.
just that kid's state.
that's giving your
That's a
weekend
Friday
time,
night,
that's a
though.
Friday night, your time.
That's a Friday night.
Not just right after
Or a
school.
Tuesday night, or, I mean, gatekeeping could be all through. the
Yeah,
week.
it could,
3 hours
on
Okay.
in middle school
Well, we'll,
especially,
uh,
because you don't do anything on Friday.
Like I said, I don't need any final determinations on this document, we'll mess with that next month, but give some thought to that. Should it be 10 everywhere, 20 everywhere, or somewhere in the middle, and we'll try to come to a consensus next time.
So much language for
About sixth one down on the third page, special education interpreters, extra hours for after school, et cetera. Right now, we paid each person's hourly rate, and for most of our interpreters, that ranges, I believe, from 29 to 43, depending on their experience level. Dr. Kohlhauer is convinced that she has a pool of people who would do that for $20 an hour. Would be an opportunity to save a pretty significant amount of money, and so that was the recommendation there. Thoughts on that?
So is the idea with this to push our people who are with those kids during the day and push them out and then have other people go in the evening and on these trips or these after-school stuff? Is that the idea with this?
I don't think there's any intent to push anybody out. It would
I'm
just
just
be that
curious,
if
because
if they chose to, well, the special ed budget is just like everybody
Oh, I get
else's.
it. I get it.
And if we can hire somebody for $20 an hour as opposed to 43, that makes a lot of sense. I think it would be offered first to our current employees, but it would be, hey, it pays $20 an hour, do you want to do this?
Is there a lot of after-school interpreters?
Not a ton, I don't think.
It depends on the student.
Yeah, if they're,
I just-
If they're
I mean-
active in a sport, which there have been, or if they're things
So
like
that would be like your
That's-
deaf and,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. So, yeah, it could depend. If they're out for a couple of sports and want to do an extracurricular or
Okay.
something else, it could get to be quite a few hours.
I was just curious about that.
Okay, so that's the background on that. We'll talk about that more later. The SRO's one kind of right in the middle of the page. That used to say for football and basketball jamboree, and Dr. Haynes suggested making it to say activities outside of normal duty day, which to me makes a lot of sense. The summer middle school benchmark, I'm told we don't do anymore. I didn't know we were doing it, so that's really not a surprise to me. TMC, a little farther down, I changed 760, or it was not, I changed that to 785. It was below minimum wage again. And then on the back page, the only item there, this is something that we started doing this year, is my understanding. Paying teachers $500 to be mentors for new teachers. That's within the academic services budget, and it gets paid in June. So, I mean, it's just more of an information for you. That's something they built into their budget, and I'll put that alphabetically when we get a finished document. So what I'll do for next time are the ones that are no-brainers, like we've got to meet the state requirement for minimum wage. I'm just going to change those, and when it comes back next, we'll leave the ones that we still needed some investigation or a little more discussion. Does that sound, yes, Wes?
Instead of putting a dollar amount in there, why don't you just put state minimum wage? That way when it changes, maybe you don't have to worry about the rate.
Oh, that's true.
See, that's why I
He's
have
brilliant.
Wes. Wes is a genius. He really
Brilliant.
is.
I guess we'll keep them.
I don't know,
She said she guesses, right?
I don't know, I'm still out on that one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That does.
State minimum wage. Okay, so give some thought, talk to some of your people if they might be affected by these, the ones that we are still investigating a little bit, and come back with, next time we'll need to kind of take a vote and approve or not approve the document so we can send it on to meet and confer. Anything else on this before we go along?
Yeah, because we'll have to get that approved here before long.
Yeah, last year it was in April, and if we approve it at our March meeting and do meet and confer after, we'd be able to do either March or April. With it. Additional pay rates schedule we just did, salary schedule provisions. The only thing I did to this was when I found a 7, I changed it to an 8. Basically, changed the date at the top. Does anybody have any concerns about this?
I had some people ask me questions about acceptance of graduate credit. Just kind of looking at some other, were showing me other stuff, like comparing it to, like North Kansas City has 2 dates when they allow, we're going to just the on or before September 15th.
Yeah.
And that some districts have a February 5th deadline.
Well, and when I came here, there were 2 dates too. The reason we changed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wes, there is statutory language that says that you can't alter the amount of compensation in the middle of a contract unless additional duties are assigned. So if you get your master's in December and in February we start paying you more and you're teaching the same class load, doing everything the same, it technically is against the law to do that. If anybody's going to get called on it, it's going to be us.
Well, yes.
I mean, you all realize that, don't you?
Why? What's happening?
Can't imagine.
It's just paranoia on my part, probably. Wes, did I state that correctly?
Yeah, and that was even guidance from our legal
From
counsel.
our attorney.
Okay.
So, do other districts do it? Yes, they do. Is it legal? Not really.
But we're not gonna push it anymore.
We don't want them coming to visit us.
No, we've had enough visits
More than enough.
to last a lifetime.
So, yeah, like I said, that's been pointed out to me by people that other people do it, but that doesn't mean that it meets the requirements of the law. So, I
Those
wouldn't be
little
comfortable
laws get a little
recommending
sticky
putting
with.
that second date back in there.
And then on
It's
the,
only a few $100 typically. It's not a huge amount of money.
It's not huge, but
Can be if you're doing like an
It's
accelerated
the
one, it
law,
could be.
so that's just it. Clean and simple. Did you
other
have another
questions
question?
on this?
someone asked me on the advancement on salary schedule on the longevity. And this is eliminated before 16, 17, right? So it's been quite a while.
That language was here when I got here, and so I left it. Is that not accurate?
They were just asking me on this, something to do with steps, like on an admin steps, if it ran out at 17 and you had someone go above 17.
Oh, we don't use longevity anymore.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
I think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
just
should we
kinda,
just delete that one line?
Does it
Then
still say what
eliminate it.
longevity
It says
is?
says
longevity increases have been, well, you said, it says
it's
it's
just
been
eliminated, so
eliminated.
it's just eliminated.
In 16, 17 school year.
So you
So
could
you
just
leave
take
Okay,
it out
okay,
now.
okay.
Well, I would leave
Yeah.
it there for historical.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that gives you a date of when it was eliminated.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I would leave that.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions on this? Okay, this is something I'd like to visit about in meet and confer, so I would like a vote. All those in favor of sending this document on as presented to meet and confer, raise your hand, please. Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you very much. The next, well, 2 of the next 3 are about calendars. There's a whole big lot of calendars in there, 25 pages worth. The 2 that we had discussed last month, whether or not to change, were the para calendar and the library facilitator calendar. The para one is on page 4, and our discussion last time was to leave it the same. It does not have the paras working either parent-teacher conference night. Okay, that left them at 176 days for 18-19, which is the exact number of days that they have this year. The reason we opted not to we had talked some about increasing a day. When you increase a day for 150 people, that ends up being a decent amount of money. So we opted to leave that, and I think the conversation last time was, yeah, that makes sense, leave it alone. Is that still the consensus?
Well, we just want to make sure that when when the schools are having their full staff meetings, that they wait until the paras are there so that no one's left out. We don't want that to happen any longer.
And so for
First training.
clarification, we're saying the building staff meetings.
Any team
Like,
building that's
they
done
have-
in the building is done when everybody is there. It doesn't done before the 13th
So if we
day
do
of August.
district-wide PD of some sort on the 10th, we're,
Unless you need your
What is
pairs
the
there.
10th?
If you think the pairs should be there, then you don't do it on the 10th.
Because in
That was-
essence, what we have is 2 days, right? So like this year, it was 1 day of a work, the first day back was a teacher work day. And then the second day was where a lot of building meetings were happening.
so what we're saying as we're building that back-to-school schedule is the 9th is the workday, the 10th is like district-wide PD, and then the 13th is the Monday, paras come back, that's like a building day. So building meetings,
Team building, whatever you do for your building.
okay. I just want to make
Unless
sure
you
that
want-
as a district, we're still going to be doing things on the 10th.
Because you're not, I mean, theoretically, the paras aren't gonna, I mean, they're not involved in, what do they do for professional
That's
development?
what I,
They don't do anything for on professional development days either.
They're all
Anyway, they're at the
going
buildings, right?
places
Okay.
tomorrow.
Right, well, they
They're
are,
what?
but
They
it
all
just,
go places, like tomorrow, they're all going places, at least I think the ones in our building are.
Yeah. I don't know. That's
Yeah,
what I'm asking.
they have.
they have their own PD, but
but on that district level PD, that's not going to be any kind of intruder training or anything like that. Those are all going to be building level,
The
correct?
intruder training and the building meetings are the two pieces that we're making sure are not on the 10th. I just wanted to make sure we were clear,
Yes.
because there still needs to be things going on the 10th.
Right,
So the 10th would
For
in essence
the
be
teachers that are
content PD?
Possibly.
it
I
could
mean,
be
it's
like
not-
last year's Ruby Payne or whatever.
Yes.
There
Yeah.
are things that apply to the
General.
teachers that don't to the paras and vice versa.
Okay.
So just anything that applies to everybody needs to wait until
The 13th.
Right.
So I just want, so we're talking building meetings and
Intruder
intruder training. Make sure those two things are not happening on the 10th. Okay.
Okay, and then the other one we talked about was the library facilitator calendar, and we did opt to add 1 day back into that because we got a lot of feedback from the elementaries that they were needed at parent-teacher conferences, typically for book fairs and those types of things. To add 1 day back for 12 people was relatively inexpensive compared to 1 day for 150. So their calendar increased 1 day, everyone else's is the same, and the whole book is right here.
And there's a purpose for them being there.
Yes.
To run those library fairs,
Okay.
which generate a lot of money.
This is another issue that I would like to discuss at Meet and Confer. So the calendars as they are in front of you, which everybody's the same except library facilitators have 1 additional day. All those in favor of moving that on to Meet and Confer, would you raise your hand, please? Opposed, same sign. Okay, we will move them on, thank you. All right, now, for your hearing pleasure, we have Wesley J. Metz, Director of Finance, is going to discuss changing pay dates, which will be a fun topic for all.
Everybody have the calendar. So every year, the middle of
Should
the
have had a
year,
2018, a 2019, and a 2020. Did everybody get these?
I don't think
No,
so.
we didn't get this.
That's not in there.
Serious?
No.
oh, you guys didn't get the calendars?
No, not that.
We got lots of calendars, but they're not
Yeah,
that.
not
Dr. Newhart, is the door open into the, is Michelle gonna make them? All right,
Yeah.
well, let's talk about something else.
I didn't go and lock it.
So does that take care of discuss library facilitator count?
Yes.
Go under, okay.
Yeah, the discuss prayer calendar and the discuss library facilitator calendar. Wes is gonna be coming back with that in a minute. I'm gonna send around 3 different things here. If you would grab one of each, I better send them all the same direction. And while we're doing that, or if anybody needs a restroom break, this would be a good time probably.
I agree. I'll make sure my previous district.
The three documents that are coming around are things to think about based on the board's decision to re-examine leave buyback. We have some proposed wording and things that would need to be changed in the policies to accommodate that. And the calendars are back already.
Are we going back to the calendars?
Yeah, that's, I don't want, who else will get cranky if he gets out of the way.
Let's see, let's.
Did everybody get one?
I think we're still.
Aaron, did you want one? You have one? Yep.
What's that? Made or made it not? Oh, here. Is that-
Well, no, I meant the stuff I was handing around.
Oh, I don't care about your stuff.
Kumbaya, just like, woo.
What's that team building, PD or something?
Yeah.
I got it, yeah, thank you.
Robert?
Okay, so Wes is going to tell us about his grand design.
It's a method to his madness.
It is bad.
There's always a method to Wes's madness.
Magic on the side. That's like kind of twisted. Sorry, did everybody get one?
Yep.
So I know I brought this up last year, someone used to remember it. I would really like to move the pay date off the last day of the month. There's a few reasons why. One of the biggest reasons to me is in mid-year, everybody goes about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, depending on when Christmas break falls without a paycheck. Moving it to the 10th of the month will eliminate that problem. Anywhere between the 10th and the 20th basically avoids almost every single holiday, every break, all those things. So what I've proposed here is instead of moving it initially from the 1st to the 10th, the first 6 months of 18-19, I move it a couple days a month until we get to the 10th by December. Okay, so that way it gives people time to change their bank accounts for their automatic payments. I don't know what else they would have to change. Because some people have money come out the day after they get paid.
So Wes, when you say the 10th, you mean that's the actual end of the pay period?
Nope, that's when the day the check will, your money will hit your bank.
Okay.
So the boxes, the pay periods are still going to remain the same. Okay, that's what the Saturday boxes are, the bold and the Saturdays. You guys see that? The bold on the weekdays is when we're going to pay it. And then after that, it'll fall on the 10th unless the 10th's on a weekend, and then it'll fall on that previous Friday. So like in February of 19, it'll be the 8th, and it'll be the same thing in March because it falls on the weekend.
But August, September, and October, it'll just be different dates, like the
Well-
1st of August, the 4th of September, the 5th of October,
Just for the first year we do
those
this.
first 4 months.
Because I did 2 years here so you can see going forward,
So
from then on, it'll be the 10th.
I'm confused. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So rather than being July 31st, it would be August 1st. Is that what I'm understanding?
Okay, for the first year.
I know, I'm just
Okay,
trying to
so
wrap
yeah,
my
I'm
mind
gonna, I'm
around.
gonna move it a day the first time, and then in September, I'm gonna move it a couple more days. In October, I'll move it a couple more days. The difference is, your last check will not come in July, your last check will come in August.
So this is gonna impact new teachers. They will not get paid in August. They will not get paid until September 10th.
No, because they're moving it just one day at a time, it'll be September
fourth.
4th.
Right, the
But-
first
That'll be
But,
after
but
that.
following this.
Correct. So they start on the 10th typically, the 9th or 10th, so at 30 days, they get a check.
So,
Instead of only working 2 weeks to get a check, now it's gonna be close to 30 days.
I understand.
Does that make sense? Okay, now that's for the 9 month. Now,
But that's how it
well,
is in a lot of
I
districts. too.
understand that's how it is. I
So,
just am trying.
the only challenge will be,
If somebody starts July 1st and you're a 12-month employee, your first check will be 6 weeks going forward. That'll be the only time though. After that, every check will be 30 days, approximately, 30, 31. But that eliminates that big gap every year in the middle of Christmas break.
The only problem I have with, I mean, it's gonna affect a lot of people's payment issues. Because I
Right, yeah,
can't.
that's why I wanna
my
get the notification out soon so you can start preparing to change your future.
But I'm saying for
payments.
those first few months, it's gonna be a mess because,
Right, that's why I wanna get it out now.
Not if you, right at the beginning, set it for after the 10th of the month.
Yeah.
Then those first few months, your money will come different times, but your payments won't be due till after that. And then after that, it'll be set for the 10th of the month, or after the 10th of the month every time.
but you're in essence pushing your pay
I know.
date back
10 days.
a couple weeks.
Yeah, you're gonna push your
Almost
payday
10
down for a
So
couple
for
weeks.
payments, I mean, it's bad enough as it is when you get paid once a month. There, I mean,
Yep, I know.
people aren't, their bills aren't gonna change 10 days. My due date's not gonna change 10
Right.
days.
It's gonna cause a little bit of problems in the beginning, but after that, then it's a routine. You're still getting paid. The first year is when the issue is, because you're gonna have to change your dates, it's gonna affect your income for the first year, those kind of things. But you're still receiving all your money over 12 months. Okay? And like I said, at the end, it pushes your pay date, even the 12 months. They won't get their last check in July, they get it, or excuse me, June, they get their last check the 10th of July. And then the 9 months will get their last check in August. So you'll still get 12 checks. It's just it pushes everything a month.
But the whole reason to do this is strictly to avoid
Well,
the gap.
You have a huge gap in the middle of the year every year.
What
There's
would
a 6 to 8
be,
weeks.
what would be different if you picked like the fourth Friday of every month?
July.
Then you don't have that big gap in December. Cause even
Yeah,
if
you
you
would,
pay,
because
that's
the fourth-
close to the fourth Friday at Christmas, and then you're paying them the fourth
There's
Friday
still
for
5 or 6
January.
weeks, because you can only go to the 3rd week in December. So really, it's not, and the fourth Friday won't always work either, because sometimes you're gonna have a 5-week Friday.
Well, but then you still get paid on the fourth.
Maybe I'm making it, so for the people for this school year,
Right.
our first check came in August. So the last one would technically be in July, which would technically be July 31st.
Correct.
But it's going to be August 1st.
Correct.
This year.
I understand it's just this year. I'm saying, that's what I'm trying, because we're gonna have to explain this to people.
Yeah.
So I wanna make
So
sure
that
it's
people aren't
crystal
thinking they're gonna go an
clear.
extra month without- yeah.
Exactly.
So that's why instead of immediately going to the
Right.
10th, I'm gradually doing
You're
it.
gonna
Plus,
have
I'm giving them notice now, so they can change their payment dates in the future to get them to the
But I
10th.
can't
You
change
can't
my
do that, though.
payment
You
date.
can't
If
change
I buy a
my
car today,
House and
if I buy a
rent.
car today, my payment's gonna be due 30 days from now.
Right.
Well,
So-
yeah, but I mean, you change up your automatic payment dates, so
But I
whether they come out
can't.
to
But
the
you
10th.
can't.
But
I'm
things
not
are gonna
gonna
be
do.
due.
When your house payment or your car payment are due on the first and you
Right.
set it up based on that, you can't just go,
You can't
oh,
just
no, by the
change
way,
it.
I'm not paying you for.
They
2
don't
more
want to do
weeks.
that.
I mean, all my bills
Today,
are
in this
based
day and
on.
age, so many people pay their bills online, like, don't you, I mean, from the bank, like you go in and you pay all those.
Yeah, but
I need
we're
some
saying
money
you
to
still
save.
have
You
set
would
dates
live
to
on a
pay
certain
them.
day.
If I purchase
You
a
can't change your
vehicle, I
set
can't
date.
change my
Yeah.
date.
The middle of the month is a rough, I mean, most people have their things set up knowing that you either have it the last day of the month or the first day of the next month. I mean, like, that's how most people's, because that's the way it's been.
I know. And again,
The 10th of
this
the month is
is
just
to
very
help
difficult.
alleviate every year, we're going that big gap in the middle of the year.
But do
And-
you care if you
I'm
have
all-
that big gap versus
I'm all
doing
for
this?
fixing that, because that
Yes.
is a
It
continual
causes a lot of
problem. We just have
Most
to make sure we can
districts-
It's called
communicate this.
budgeting.
I know.
Budget.
Well, most districts pay between the 10th
Don't
and the
use your
20th.
check.
Most districts, a lot of districts in Missouri pay right around the 20th.
Yeah, cause we always had the fourth Friday.
Because,
25th.
yeah, I was gonna say, because that's when the state money comes in typically. So, but, I didn't want to take it clear to the 20th, that's a big gap, that's a huge gap. I thought the 10th of the month, that helps us out, that helps the district out, there's no holidays around that time. The first year, it's gonna cause a little grief for people, but going forward, it should fix it. But I wanna get them out ahead of them now and let them know now, so they've got, 5 months to plan before it hits.
I just think that's gonna cost people a lot.
Okay, so for tonight, this is an informational item.
Yes.
Any other questions that you want Wes to clarify?
Should Wes send an email?
I'm not sending anything
Explains
out
it?
until,
I mean, that explains it, cause you could, like, they're worried about explaining it, I would be too.
No,
So,
I wouldn't send anything out
No, I'm not
until
gonna
it's
send anything out.
all.
till it's,
It's probably already on social media.
Oh, yeah, it's already-
Is this streamed live or just recorded? I had somebody ask me that
It's
today.
recorded.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Recorded and then put on
What would
YouTube.
that do, like
We can
payroll
redact
wise
and
for
edit.
people doing the payroll?
Can I make a
Bump it up
suggestion?
some.
Absolutely.
I think what we need to do right now, because this is the first time that a lot of people have seen it, is step back yourselves and just ask, okay, what issues, those types of things, and let's bring this back at the next SJSD United meeting to go over those, before we do any further communication.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there was any intent to send anything out.
No, yeah, we're getting this
now.
approved tonight.
This is
Okay,
an informational item. Think about it. Think about what questions you might have, problems it might solve, problems it might create. We'll talk about it next month. Okay,
And then
thanks,
West
Wes.
and Mets will be back.
Wes will be back. All right. I gave you, I believe, three different documents, a one-page one and two board policies. To my mini board, I want to apologize to you in advance because we didn't get to this third one, and I haven't even sprung this on you yet, so it's going to be the first time they're hearing it too. All along, we've been talking about the potential of the leave buyback, eliminating that. What does that do? What does it save us? When does it save it? All those kinds of things. The consensus from this group, as I recall, and my memory's not good, so if I'm wrong, tell me. The consensus of this group, as I recall, was that we weren't interested in doing away with that unless it came to a point where we'd have to RIF additional people to keep it. Is that a pretty good synopsis of our discussion?
I believe that my understanding of our discussion was that we would entertain going back to the original $20 a day instead of eliminating it completely, if that meant allowing us to not
Retain
RIF some
some
people.
other
Yes,
people.
but not completely eliminating it. Am I correct in that?
Okay, yeah, I think that is a fair assessment of that. The task I was given by the board on Monday night was to give some thought to and look up policy procedure wording to eliminate it entirely. Did I misinterpret that?
No.
Okay, so what you have,
Eliminate, really suspend it.
Suspend it, not eliminate.
Suspend it.
suspend it indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
Okay.
So
All
we
right.
can bring it back as soon as we can.
And what I forgot to talk with my mini board about when we met a little earlier, because, well, Tammy and Wes were fighting. If you ask me.
Let's just be honest.
Let's just be honest. Tammy and Wes were fighting.
We just sat there.
But we
quietly.
still love each
Look,
other.
look at board policy GCPC and turn to page 2. As it currently stands, the board policy on early retirement notification says that anyone who meets retirement qualifications through PSRS or peers, certified staff, if they notify the district by December 31st of the year at the end of which they want to retire, they get a $1,000 stipend. My suggestion is, and this is, like I said, this is the first time they're hearing it, if we institute something like this now, saying it's either going to go away or we're going to go back to $20, I feel like people who notify us by March 16th should still get that $1,000 stipend.
I think that's awesome.
Okay, so
I think
that's,
that's very fair.
what do you think about that? Many board
Because we've
member, one or
changed the
two?
rules of the game in the middle of it, and
Okay,
they
so
didn't have that choice.
that's a separate issue. If they do go this direction, I think it would be only fair to say, we're going to extend the deadline for notifying us about early retirement so that you get the stipend if you let us know by March 16th. Okay, so that's a separate issue.
So that would in essence give them 2 weeks, 2, 3, 2
We give them 2 weeks and a day from the time, if the board, when the board makes a decision on the 26th.
And that's
I-
when you plan to make a decision about the
Yes.
buyback? Because I know the people that are waiting for that decision
Right.
kind of before
And
they decide
yes,
whether to retire.
so, yeah,
Okay.
to me, the 26th is kind of a drop dead date. They need to let us know what's going to go as far as cuts.
So, correct me if I'm mistaken here. This potential suspension of the entire leave buyback is effective this year, so the people who are retiring this year will not
No, they-
receive.
No, they will get it this year.
this year.
This is all
If-
for
As long
next
as they
If
have
they
been in
notify
this
by-
primary.
March 16th.
Okay, I'm not talking about the
No,
one
but-
thousand, the 1,000. I'm
That's gonna
talking
be the
about
same thing.
the-
That's on
The
sheet
days.
number 3.
On the
Well,
number of days, okay, got it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, I'll
Pushing ahead,
address that.
sorry.
Okay, the other board policy that you got is GCBDA, which is identical to GDBDA. Anytime you see C, the letter C in a policy, that refers to certified staff. D refers to classified or non-certified staff. The wording is virtually identical. I saw no reason to bring both of them.
So trees.
The sections that are darkened would be the sections that would be eliminated,
Suspended.
suspended indefinitely, if the board so chooses. The third page that I gave you is the one with the bigger red print. I sort of not, I gave them all away. That is the wording that I suggested to them. If they go in that direction, that would be inserted in policies GCBDA and GDBDA right before table 1 on the top of page 2. Okay, effective as of March 16th, 2018, the district is suspending the leave buyback provision of this policy indefinitely. Employees giving notice of their retirement by March 16th, 2018, effective at the end of the 2017-18 school year, will be eligible for leave buyback as described in the policy. So it wouldn't change the wording of the policy. Those notifying the district of their intent to retire after March 16th will receive no compensation for their unused leave days. And that was where you were saying, Eric, one we had talked about previously had been the 20, and you're right about that. Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, so it would need to reflect that. I think it would go a long way to your staff. It would mean a lot to your staff. Instead of saying you're suspending it indefinitely, put a time frame on it. We're suspending it for the next school year, to where we have to come back and talk about it a year from now.
The problem
I
with
think your
that,
staff would, I mean, because people are already saying they're never bringing it back. It's never, I mean, that's already flying.
No,
I
around.
mean, that's a possibility,
I
but by
understand that,
suspending
but
it,
when you
we
keep
hope
saying
that will happen.
eliminate, that automatically takes, it's a different tone. It would mean a lot to our staff if you put a time frame on it.
The only problem with that is that we don't have another revenue stream as of yet.
That's
We
what I'm
don't
saying,
know
that's
when
why you
it'll
say we
We
suspend
don't
it.
know when it would be brought back.
We can come back in a year and say, oh, we still don't have it. At least it's come to the table.
It can still come back to the
It can come
table.
back.
Indefinitely just means,
We
the whole
don't have
purpose
a
to
set time.
indefinitely is because we don't know when we're gonna have another revenue stream, or if we'll have it. And if we have a revenue stream that's 63 cents, not $1.80 that we need, it may not come back with that first revenue stream, depending on what we have to spend that money on. You know what I mean? There's so much unknown that indefinitely means, suspended means there's hopes it's coming back. If we use eliminated, then it's eliminated and we're done, and
Yeah.
we would have to redo
And we had
that.
talked about, people had talked about at the meeting Monday night about eliminating it and changing the policy and, you know, and I talked to Dr. Newhart about it, and suspending the policy is a much better way of going about that, because the intent is to bring this back.
Well, I think that what she's arguing though is that it's not the word suspend, it's the word
Or
indefinitely.
indefinitely, if you
Because
would
that-
say.
That has a
But we don't know, we
connotation.
can't say.
Right. but
Then,
if
so
you-
then in a year, if you put in here until this date, we come back in February of 2019 and you say, we still don't have a revenue source, so we edit that to now say for the following year, but at least it's kind of like a sunshine clause
Yeah.
that the community wants. It kind of gives your staff, you want us to trust you, you have to give us
You
something
can
to trust in.
explain- You can explain it the same way and do the same thing. We're saying indefinitely, we're gonna look at
It
it again,
means
because
two
we're not
totally
allowing them
different
to
things.
take this that's highlighted is not coming out of the policy. It's gonna be lined through with the
So
red,
it'll
with
be
this,
Very different.
with this, so it will still be in the policy. See, because we said we don't want it coming out of the policy,
No.
because we're suspending, not eliminating. So eliminating would mean everything you see highlighted out of the policy, it's gone. If we
We are not
just
doing
line through it, which was Wes's very wise, I think, suggestion, and then put this statement before or after it, then that should be the message to the staff, both certified and non-certified, that it hasn't gone away. That it's still in the policy, it's just suspended, So every time you see this policy, and every year, this is a policy we'll revisit every year, I'm sure. I don't believe how we wouldn't. We should. If we don't, you should task us to visit this every year.
We will.
But I'm pretty sure Dr. Kraus will have that too. Then, you know, here it is, it's lined out, it's still there. Do we have what we need this year to take away the suspension and put it back into
And it,
play?
I mean, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a new revenue source, because
Yeah, it
all of
might
these
not take that.
estimations that we have right now, and Wes will say that they're estimations. And, you know, if things were to fall a little bit differently, one way or the other in his estimations, then we could bring this maybe back sooner than what we anticipate. But we know right now, for sure, we can't do this next year. That's $330,000.
But you're not gonna see the funding from next year, isn't that what we discussed? That was the other thing, I've had that question, I don't know how many times since Monday, but I thought they weren't gonna see that money for a year, so how is it helping us next year?
This would take away from that next year's budget.
Well,
We wouldn't be
that
paying
is
it out.
another discussion. It would be wise, if this is implemented, it would be wise to pay that out at the end of this fiscal year in June.
To use this year's budget funds for that.
So
Right.
then it's not on next year's.
Correct.
And you
That's
basically
what our
start the
conversation
year
was. Sorry, I missed that part.
And that was the reason
So
for
then do
asking
you have to
for a,
suspend policy to do that?
In
Uh,
this situation,
as far as
since
when
we
it's
don't
paid
know
out,
when it
This
was
is
gonna
an
come back.
Because it is written in policy to
where
how
it's
it's paid.
yeah, we probably, that's a good point. Yeah, there's a line here somewhere that says it would be paid out in June.
Here's the whole question, besides the savings next year. Really, I mean, you guys are sharp on this. You're trying to save jobs. How many people do you think will take advantage of this? How many people out there do you think will take advantage of this?
I think you're gonna see a whole lot in the next couple of years,
Retirement, you mean?
if you're taking it away.
You believe that to be accurate?
I would say there were a lot of people that didn't put in their retirements in
waiting.
December
They're
because they thought it was gonna still be here.
But now
Yes.
they might.
They-
Oh, yeah.
They will.
They,
Then what-
yeah,
yeah.
this means way more to them than the $1,000 in December meant to
Yeah.
them, so.
But now they're gonna get that too.
I understand, which,
Which is lovely.
Dr. Kraus, I
That's
think
nice
the word
of you.
indefinitely could come out of the wording and it would say the same thing and it might not be as.
It would have more reassuring language.
yes,
It's kind of like.
indefinitely to your staff right now is not probably the word you want to say.
So just put a period after
So
policy.
you think just by eliminating indefinitely, it would be less,
So it wouldn't give them a time period
It's
at all.
suspended though, it's
It's
suspended,
suspended.
it's not.
it would sound better.
Yeah,
I think the
that
word
indefinitely
indefinitely
is a very negative.
Okay, I can handle that.
So, and I think we thought putting that in would answer the
Pacify
time
people.
period. Or answer the time period question, but it still reads the same, it's suspended till who knows when.
While it's suspended, will us as employees still be building the time? I mean, so when it comes back into effect, it won't be like, it won't start up back up at that time, will it all kind of still be staying still?
The
Unused
intent
leave
is
doesn't
all,
change.
yeah,
Okay,
the
I'm just
intent
not-
is that all of your days are there. If you have grandfathered days, those will all stay in place.
Everything would stay, so it's
You will
suspended, so
still
then
be
in a couple of years.
accruing.
I mean, if
while
Eric
we're
only is gone a couple days in the next 2 years, and
He's still gonna
then
have all his
all that
days.
would be there to protect him.
That's the protection of
And you did the
suspended.
same cap anyway, right?
Okay, I mean, it's,
Same
so
cap.
I'm
Yeah,
just-
so we're just talking cognition
Well, we
and
don't want it
semantics
to
here,
be-
really.
okay,
The end result's the same.
Well, that piece, right, is suspended.
okay.
No,
Cap piece.
no, we don't
It's
want
just the
anybody to
payout.
think that we're doing away with any
okay,
of
well,
that.
yeah, I'm hearing a couple different things here. Technically, unless we make some change to the policy, right now it says, I know you haven't been here long enough, Eric, but let's say you've got 110 days. When we started the year, you would have gone to 122, and any of those 12, between 110 and 122 that you didn't use, you would have gotten paid out for,
But now you will not.
unless we make a policy change to indicate that.
For those particular days.
Wes, am I straying from the?
No, that's correct.
They would lose
So
those
there's,
days.
so they'll just
So-
lose them
so-
at the end of the year next year.
Well, this is just my personal opinion, we haven't talked about this. My personal opinion is I don't think they should lose those days. I think
Well,
anything
yeah.
that's above the 110, if you don't use them, they just go into your bank.
But the
For-
bank is 110.
It is right now, but I'm
Right.
saying I don't know how we can, in
Well,
essence,
that's the
we're
way
Because
punishing.
people are gonna
It used to-
take them.
Well,
I
at
mean,
225, they used to
people-
lose them too.
Am I wrong
There,
in my
you're
math?
defeating
Right, but it
yourself.
was a higher,
$10,000
You used to lose the days.
The
after-
what?
If you had the
we
max
never-
number of days.
The paying out the
Like the
days
next
just
year.
started last
Yeah,
year.
I understand that.
Someone was.
So they used to lose them when they,
They used to lose them.
Yeah, they
Then
used
people
to.
would use them, but our whole point to having the policy to begin with is trying to
If
get
they
people to
accu-
be in
Right.
school.
If they accumulate 110, those days from 110 to 122 or whatever, you were paying out currently in a given year.
Correct.
And
And I feel like we should continue that. That's my-
Continue to
just-
pay
that's
out
my
that
personal-
year.
that year,
So
only
for
that year
someone
for
who's trying
those
to
that are
retire
already at 110.
And they've got,
That,
That's
way they don't
a good
use
and they've got
it.
200 and some days.
Is that going to be a
Because
major
they've got that
cost?
second bank back there.
actually, that's more than, just about as much as
I was gonna say it defeats your
once
purpose.
they max out their days.
Mm-hmm.
It could potentially be a lot of money, especially if you pay it on the same scale that's listed there.
I don't make a deal. I know.
Is that how, that,
It'd be
Correct me.
$1,200 if you're maxed out and you're at the $100 level.
And they don't take any days at all during the year.
right.
you know what that payout was last year?
It was almost $240,000.
Of the buyback of those days above 110? Wow.
I think that would have been a lot of people that had
This
a lot
summer,
of
it's
days already built up,
$240,000.
and then when that was implemented, they had to pay for those days, right? Am I understanding that right? Because I had like 112 or 13, and then, I know I got paid, but I didn't have a whole lot that I got paid for. But I mean, if somebody had, I'm making
Didn't use their whole 12,
right,
then that's $1,200 per person, that's what Wes was saying.
Yeah.
That could be a lot of money, so
Well, that's
If
just for
you're
the ones that are 25, you know, if
number of
you're
years in
like
service.
20 or 21, it's $80 per day.
Right.
If you're-
yeah.
Typically, you're not gonna get there until you've been here at least 10 years anyway. So it takes you 10 years approximately to get there.
Yeah, because it's got a scale.
Right.
And most districts, you just lose them, but we were trying to, let we came up with this awesome policy that we can't now afford, to try to work.
The part about it that bothers me the most is that in essence, we're punishing people for having good attendance.
And
That's
we're
what I'm
forcing
saying,
them
you're
to be
defeating the
gone.
whole purpose of what we've been trying to work for. People will just start being gone.
Have we thought
And we
about
don't want them gone, that's the whole
But that's
reason we
what's
did
gonna
it.
happen,
I
if
know.
I'm gonna not, people are gonna, not me, but, yeah, I'm gonna use them if you're not gonna pay me for them.
The design of this
Is what people are gonna say.
was to encourage attendance.
Right.
But also to encourage people to retire.
True.
I mean, I hate to say
That's
it.
the message you just wanted to say.
Could you get to a position where,
For
or a
this
place
time,
where
I
you
mean,
need
it
people
makes
to
sense.
retire?
What if we consider, because of this, in our current situation, this does not cost us money in the immediate. If we do increase the maximum days that you can accrue, so that this can account for the next few years, potentially not having the buyback, and that way we don't have to pay out every year for those that we currently have, because this would affect anybody who's currently at 110 max. We would then increase the max number, so then they would not be paid out, but they would also have those days to potentially be paid out when we do
Down
have
the road,
revenue.
even if we did something like 100 and.
So would that be
50 or
grandfathering in
something,
those
so.
extra days? No?
That makes a lot of sense.
That
Not
does.
necessarily, but I think it would save us money now,
Uh-huh.
and it would allow them to still have
The opportunity.
that paid for
Right.
when they do retire, when the revenue source does come back in.
So if we think like $12 a year, or 12 days a year, so at least go a couple years out, because we don't know when that revenue source is gonna come. So 24 years and 2 years,
134.
36, so do like
135.
135 days or something, which would cover us for 3 years without having to pay out. And then that time,
Plus covered.
2 years, 2 years, yeah.
So that would be changing this number of your policy.
Yes.
Wes, I see you shaking your head. Tell me what's going on.
It's just gonna cost you more money in the long run. Because right now, if you pay them out, they're at the $80, and then all of a sudden next year, they're at the $100, you just made the cost go up.
From $20 a day, $80.
See, because if you go,
That-
if you're going to accrue them, so if you pay them out future days, if we wait 5 years to bring this back,
you've added
You've
another.
added a whole bunch of money.
Is there any
Use that
way,
ton
would it
of
be a
money for that
nightmare,
payout.
would it be a nightmare to keep track of when they had those
Oh,
years?
Yes.
That would be a
Oh,
nightmare.
I'm sure it is.
Well,
Do
we
you
have
have a better
computers.
idea, Wes, that, I mean, would allow for people who have good attendance to still be able to
Pay
get
it
this?
out.
It's to leave it in there and pay it out. Just don't suspend the policy. That's the best.
For current employees continuing on, in my opinion, it's exactly that.
And you said you paid out over 200,000 though, was it?
Yeah, it was 560,000 was the total payout for our PTO.
So then you're
Okay, so
8.3.
there still would be potentially 300 plus.
Oh, yeah, you're not eliminating everything.
Yeah,
unless
no,
you-
I
yeah,
understand that.
Have we,
So if we continue to pay out to those folks who have in excess of 110 at the end of the year, could potentially cost us 200,000, but we would still be saving the other 300,000.
Are you gonna get your retirees though?
I'm sorry.
Correct.
Are you still gonna get your retirees though?
Well, they're not gonna get the 330,000. I mean,
They're not gonna get the buyout of all of their
Yeah,
days.
they-
It would just be
It would just be
days
the
over
excess.
one.
any
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
over.
So I would
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
so.
I would
Yeah.
think we'd still get our
Yeah, while they
retirement.
might get 1,200, they would be losing out on 12,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd
So
be-
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, the enticement to retire would still be there.
Okay, I'm just,
Dr. Newell, what do you think?
That's my opinion. I think you keep it in effect for current employees.
At $20 a day?
Just go back to the old policy, pay $20 a day until it's brought back.
But then
would
we
be
don't save the
simplest solution.
330,000.
That way they're still
That's
getting
cheap.
something, and that's the, that's the
Well, that's what
cost
we kinda need to
effective.
think about.
you're saying the $20 a day for
Everything
the
for the
total
12 days.
buyback?
Oh, for those in excess of 110.
Yeah, you can change your policy to go back to where it was before, you pay the $20 a day.
But then you still you still save the 300 and something,
Yeah, you'd actually save a little bit more than that.
yeah.
Well, you'd save 80%
Yeah.
of your 160.
So then we really wouldn't suspend this policy, we'd rewrite it to be the
Well,
old
You're gonna have to
policy.
rewrite a policy.
Yeah, then we'd have to
You're gonna have to
eliminate
rewrite
this
the whole thing
policy
to work right.
after this year and rewrite it for
Well-
the $20 a day.
You could just add that into this.
I was gonna say,
Since you're inserting this into the policy anyway, I mean, you could just
Yeah, we
add
wouldn't
that
have
as
to
a, as a
just-
temporary.
So we
It's
could
just
still
for the
leave
days
this for
over
when we
110,
wanna-
it's
Yes,
not for
still leave
anything
it
else.
there, but then just insert the
While,
will be.
while the policy is suspended, we
Suspended.
will be paying out the excess, current employees' excess at
The
at
$20,000,
$20 a day.
110 days will be paid out, those,
$20
yeah.
$20 a
It's
day.
just for the, it's not
That's
for
what it
everybody,
was
it's
till
just
this
for
year.
those.
Yeah.
This is the only year it's been more than $20 a day.
Right.
So no, it
Well,
won't
they
make them
prior.
stay, I mean, it may still make some retire, but that's okay, we kinda need a little bit of an incentive for some more retirements.
Right.
If the purpose of this, we're trying to
Right.
save jobs.
Oh, so you're talking about the retirees, not the buyback?
We're,
The
yeah,
12
we're
days
only
of-
talking, to my knowledge, about the people who have 110 days
Well,
when
that's what
the
I thought,
next
right.
year, that we're only talking about those 12 days.
Right.
Right.
That if they don't use them, then they lose them.
But what I'm saying is $20 a day, is that enough not to make them take their days? I mean,
Well, I mean, if it has been in the past, or it has, this is the first year it's
Right,
been
and if
more
they
than
did,
20.
right.
And you know what, according to Dr. Grouse, nothing's made people not take days because we have an ungodly amount of people gone every day.
I'm gonna put somebody on the spot here, if I may, Karen Pecora.
You wouldn't if you saw her face.
Anyone named
Well,
Carol?
she knows what I'm talking about. She's been here.
Couple
and
years.
It means something to not use her days because of the buyback. So when you say that, there are employees out there that this does mean something.
Even the $20 means something.
No.
No, well, she's asking is the
No,
$20.
the $20 isn't.
Yeah.
That's why we
Right.
changed it
That's
to
what-
what it is.
That's why we
currently.
changed it, but now we're gonna, so she's saying, but will that make them be at work? Well, probably not, because they're not at work even when it's
But they-
$100 this
But
year.
yes, they are, Tammy.
I
They
mean,
are.
those people
There
are,
are
exactly.
employees out there at the $100 a day.
But those employees were still here at $20 a day.
Yeah,
Those
they
are the
still
same
came
employees that
at
are gonna be here
$20 a day. They're gonna be here
Well, it's
regardless.
only the employees in the 20 to 30 year range
Yeah.
that have the accumulation and know, they see that buyback. I think.
They see the
Dr.
value.
Kraus' discussion, really it's those 0 to 10 year employees, you see the days being used.
Oh, yeah.
They're the ones you don't pay anything
Wes,
for.
when you were making your budget projections, what figure did you put in for leave buyback as far, in terms of the savings?
What I cut was the 360.
That's what we proposed.
Okay, the 300,000,
60,000.
okay.
I thought it was
So in your
300.
budget, you basically left in the buyback of the
The summer buyback on
110 to
Yeah.
whatever. Okay. This is just my opinion, but I think it makes the most sense since the number that Wes figured into his 8.3 million that we're cutting was the 300,000, that we use this wording to suspend the retirement buyback and leave alone the buyback of the days in excess of 110.
But change it to $20.
No, leave it where it is,
I,
because that will still achieve the 300 that has been built into the budget.
So just depending upon how many years they've been here,
Well, yeah, if
what that
somebody's,
rate would be.
I mean, somebody could accumulate 110 after 9 years, so they wouldn't get 100, they'd get 40 or whatever it is.
20.
Well, just 20. So, yeah, not everybody that would have days to sell back would be at $100 a day, but he was saying last year, we paid back a little over 200,000.
But people who would be
But
like
$20
Karen,
a
then
day.
they would get
No.
justifiable
Yeah.
He's at this
He's
rate.
saying
those
that
extra
It was
days.
paid this fiscal year,
Okay.
Lori, for last year.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, okay.
okay.
So,
That
I mean, I
answers-
know this is not good for anybody, but is that the most palatable way to do it, do you think?
I think it's best for current employees.
I do too.
That are gonna remain here next year.
I agree.
And it still encourages people to retire.
And not
Get
to
that-
use their days.
Right.
Because somebody that's been here 20 years is still going, or 21 years, is still gonna get $80 a day next year. If they don't take any of their 12 days, 8 times 12, that adds up pretty fast.
And that's something at the end.
That's something,
It's $960.
rather than just, I'm just gonna take it because you're not giving me anything, or $20.
And so often-
8,000, but they're getting, if we're 10,000.
But they're saying
but
that
they're
could
getting-
come
but
back.
they're getting 1,000.
Right, and it
Well, I think
encourages
every
them to-
individual person has to make that decision.
Yeah.
Does this pay out at the end of this year that's going away or being suspended? Is it worth it for me to take that now? I mean, every individual has to weigh that. I mean,
It's a
that's-
personal decision.
That's life.
But at the same time, it seems like every time we do something in school districts, we always hit the people that have been here the longest, the worst. I mean, your salary schedule's based around that, everything is based, so you know, really, why do people stay in education? It's because you have to have 30 years to retire. Otherwise, we'd all leave at 15 years because we get screwed about after the 15th year. I mean, it's really true, that's
Then you find
education.
out when you retire, it's a crapshoot for how long you live, whether you get the pay.
That's right. That is exactly right. But it does seem like we get
This is
those.
turning into a really morose conversation.
I'm just trying to get to that.
It's the truth.
It's all grins and giggles.
But everybody in education is
I
not
need more
here for the
evidence.
retirement, you're here for the children.
All right, so let's try to I want to get at least a consensus here. On the issue of go back with the days between 110 and 122, wherever that would fall, are we looking at preferring $20 a day buyback or whatever their rate would be according to the table, which could be anywhere from 20 to 100? Okay, so if you're in favor of doing the buyback as it is now with those days from 110 to 122 at their current rate of pay according to the table, raise your hand. Okay, if you think it should be better to just say $20 for everything, raise your hand. Okay,
That's
so,
pretty clear.
yeah, pretty clear. So that would be something we would pass on to you as the mini board to take to the larger board, that the recommendation of
I'll
this
go
group.
to policy committee next
Oh, we do
week.
that policy committee next week, yeah. So
Is that next week or the following?
Yeah, next Thursday.
Before the board meeting.
Okay. And so, in terms of this wording, the only thing that I recall that we did was take out the word indefinitely,
Right.
correct? Okay. Everybody in favor of passing this on to the policy committee with the omission of the word indefinitely, raise your hand, please. Same, opposed, same sign? Okay, so we'll do that.
And then this has to go to policy too, right?
The one for the,
Yeah.
extending to the, for the
Okay,
$1,000.
right. Board policy, GCPC, where we talked about extending the deadline to give the $1,000 stipend for notification of early retirement. If you're in favor of that wording, would you raise your hand, please? Opposed, same sign. Okay, so unanimous there.
And I want to thank Dr. Kraus for thinking of that, because we as board, Lori and I talked about it way back in January. Man, you know, if we don't make this decision, then we're, you know, people aren't going to get to take advantage of that. So I think that's very generous of
I like
the
it when
district
it's
and
done
Dr.
that way.
Kraus to extend that. I mean, it's fair, you know, it's fair.
All right.
Wish we weren't here, but we are.
Huh?
I think that's it, other than a little meeting and conferring.
We had something come through our membership, just wondering if the United agenda, like we get the minutes and things sent out after the meeting. They had wondered if the agenda for United could go out to all staff beforehand. So if there was something that a staff member wanted to come listen in on, they would
Sure, I-
know what's going to be discussed.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
So if we could just send that out to all, like we do the follow-up.
Yeah. No, that's no reason it can't. Do you think, I'm fine with the agenda, I have a few concerns about all the supporting
No, I would just say
documents.
the agenda,
Just the
agenda is all that they were
The purpose
wanting.
was, the conversation came from, there was a specific person that said that, wanted to know what the process was. Because they felt like they weren't being informed of things that they should have been informed of. And what I told them, my understanding of this process is I have a work group. Anything that I think is pertinent to my work group, when I get that agenda, I send out to my work group and say, hey, this is on the agenda. Does anybody have any feedback that they want? They felt like that wasn't what was happening to them. And so they felt like if everybody in the district had the opportunity to look at the agenda, then if there was a question, like I had a principal a couple times ago that came and asked me if there was anything about their pay, their salary scale on coming up, because she had heard a rumor about it. And I said, yes, there is. And so I showed her, even though she's in Paul's work group, you know, but it was just because I was in that building that day. So that was the purpose. They just wanted to know so that they
Yeah,
could
that makes
talk to
perfect
their
sense.
particular representative.
Okay, yeah, so I'll, all right, thanks guys.
Thanks, guys.
If, next time when you get your agenda and supporting documents, there hasn't been an agenda, an all staff email, somebody remind me. I'm a creature of habit. I've got a note for myself and I'll try to get it out. But okay, anything else? So next time, we'll bring back the additional pay rates document and anything that we didn't really come to a consensus on. Talk to your folks about the items that we said we were going to study a little further, get some feedback. Between now and next time we meet earlier because March is a parent-teacher conference month. I think it's the second Thursday instead of the third. So yeah, it's March 8th, so it's not really all that long till we meet again. If you have, in between now and then, if you have agenda items that you would like to have put on there, send them to me. Otherwise, I think we're making good progress. It's been a lot of yuck, but I appreciate your sticking with it and providing the feedback. If there's nothing else, if the meet and confer folks would stay, the rest of you could go on about your business, and we will be out by 9.
Good night.
Going about my business. Go about your business.